Okay, as I start getting ready to build this kit, I want to look at something with you. And this really isn't much about AMT versus other companies. It's more about now versus then. So this is an older kit, as we mentioned, and take a look at kind of how the sprue attaches. You have kind of this big section where it had to attach to really pour into the mold. And that is a thick attachment. So this is something where you can't even really work on it with side snippers. You really do really have to go at it with an X-Acto knife, kind of to trim this down. Really just kind of start carving it down, really at an angle to match this bevel. If you just try and bend this or pull it off, you will kind of damage that part and have to clean it up with putty. So just a very slow, very steady, meticulous cutting it with an X-Acto before trying to remove it. And you know, that's really just something from the 90s. A more modern kit, here we have the Mobius Cylon ship. You can see this one attaches very much directly to the surface with that big, more than an inch long attachment. On a more modern kit, they try and do more fill points, do it kind of attached in a smaller place. As you can see, they really try and cut it down here to make it attach as small as it can, and that really makes it easy to trim it up with side snippers or just cut it once with an X-Acto. Really is nice. But on an older kit like this, you do have to take just a little bit more time to really make sure you can clean up that sprue properly. So yeah, kind of just a reminder to take a little bit more time with these older kits, clean them up nicely, and take them off the trees nicely. And after working on it with an X-Acto knife, I've kind of separated from the tree. When in doubt, leave material on. So I was kind of further away. You can clean this up with a jeweler's file. Easier to have extra material to file off than a divot that you'd have to fill in with putty. Alright, now that we've kind of taken off the trees, we can start kind of mating these. And already I do actually like that. Doesn't look like there'll be too much putty work on these seams. Looks like once it's glued in, it should be pretty good. Yeah, not too much there once we get some glue in. And then where it attached to those sprues, we'll just clean that up kind of with a little bit of sandpaper once we get those going. And the glue we're going to be using is Tamiya Extra Thin, kind of in the green bottle here. Really great solvent. It's just going to melt your two pieces of plastic together. So I'm going to hold these two pieces together so that they're lined up right. Just get my dropper here and just kind of run it right along the seam. That's going to melt those two parts together. And I'm only going to really work on one section at a time. So I'm going to get this part glued down. I'm not going to worry about this part. Once this is nicely glued, I'll get this part held down and glue that. But I'm just going to get this part done at first, make sure that's a real good seam, and then kind of move on along the ship. Okay, once we have glued the parts, we want to start cleaning up some of these seams. And on this, we're just going to do it with some wet sanding. So we're just going to get a little bit wet so it doesn't bind up on the sandpaper, and start cleaning that up. I'm pretty happy with these seams going across the front. That seam's going to look pretty good once we kind of get this excess material cleaned up. This one looks pretty good as well. The seams I'm a little worried about. Right here we've got a big gap. We're going to have to take care of that with putty. And really we've got this part pretty good. It just kind of doesn't quite fit that well there. And right down here we're going to need a little bit of putty to fill in those gaps. The bigger issue is probably going to be on these two halves that are kind of the vertical seam of the ship. You can kind of see these two parts don't quite match up straight. We're going to have to use a metal file to start cleaning those up. here on the top, you can kind of see the same thing. They don't quite match up. So sanding is going to take care of kind of smoothing this out. We're going to do something a little more extreme kind of for that edge. Same thing on the head, this vertical seam. Now a little bit of wet sanding is going to clean up most of this, but right here we'll probably need a file to clean that up. And on the stair stepping on the back, you can see those stair steps don't quite match up. So we'll probably need a little bit of a file for those as well. So just talking about cleaning up those seams, I'm just going to take a jeweler's file and go to town here to try and get those two leveled out. Now one trick that I like to use, since I don't really want to affect this part, I'm going to put kind of a piece of tape here to really protect that. Now, just going to use our jeweler's file to make that a clean edge. Yeah, much better already. Yeah. A little bit of sandpaper will once again clean that part up. Alright, so we're getting ready to try and put some putty in, just in this little crack here. And when you're doing putty in such a small space, one of the nice things to do is use a little bit of tape. So what I'm going to do is just lay down some tape to keep my putty right where I want it. This Tamiya tape really bends well, so I can really kind of outline it that way. And a little bit right around that outside edge. Okay, so now we've laid down our tape really to protect a lot of those grid lines. Now this one, I'm just going to smooth a little bit of putty right in those gaps. Use some enamel thinner on a Q-tip, you can really smooth this, and I'm gonna sand it off, so I'm not gonna worry too much about it here. Then while that putty's still wet, pull off those pieces of tape. Alright. There we go, we've got putty just in that seam. Alright, we'll clean that up with a little bit of wet sanding once that putty has dried. We're going to move on to putting some putty in these bigger gaps here. Looking at it, it looks like there'll still be quite a bit to clean up kind of back here, trying to get all these stair steps to kind of match up the way they should. A couple of the stair steps back here will definitely need work as well. You can kind of see they don't quite match up well, and then kind of a seam kind of along this back that will need to be cleaned up as much as I can. Now thankfully this seam going across the very front actually looks very good. Looks like I'll have a little bit clean up down here just to make sure those two trenches line up really well. But overall, very happy with this front part of the ship's bow. A little bit more cleanup here. But what I'm looking at after that is it actually looks like there will be a lot of kind of putty required once we start joining things to this main hull. So we'll have to do a lot of putty to kind of clean up that seam. And back here, quite a bit on this seam. So we will have a bit of putty work to go. Now, really, what I'd love to do is just assemble the entire ship, get it all glued together, and then paint it all. That way I can have all those seams puttied and sanded before we start painting. The problem is, if I build it all, I won't be able to do the paint work on the inside of this surface. Yeah, that'll be very difficult to paint if the bottom's on this. So we're going to at least we're going to assemble the head. Actually, I can't do that until I've got the two parts. We're going to get the tail on this. We're going to get the nacelles on this. We're going to get a lot of the putty done. We're going to get the inside of this painted and detailed. We're going to get the inside of the bottom one painted. Then we'll join it together. So we're going to have to do some painting before we do our final assembly and putty and seam work. So now it is time to probably start looking at painting, and we'll start looking at paint in the next few videos. Then it'll be a lot of assembly and more putty and sanding and cleaning. Thank you guys for watching.